Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam, and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today we're going to be talking about 10 of the most messed up movies you can currently catch included with Prime Video. So Prime Video is notorious for having a bad user interface. It's sometimes hard to tell what movies are included and what aren't. And God forbid you go search for something, odds are it's gonna cost you money. But I've combed through their library and I've found 10 of the most messed up movies that are still worth watching currently included with your Prime Video membership. But we're gonna start this list all the way at the back at number 10 with an Oscar-nominated movie in Black Swan. Now, Natalie Portman actually won for Best Leading Actress in this movie, and when you watch, you can see why. When this movie was released, it came out to very mixed reviews, mostly mixed from the audience because it is so wild and so weird. But this is from director Darren Aronofsky, who's most famous for movies like Requiem for a Dream, The Fountain, and Mother with Jennifer Lawrence, and Black Swan fits right into his filmography. It's one of his more popular movies. I do recall reading a review when Black Swan was released that called it a very bad movie that was very well made. I do agree with that statement. In this movie, you follow Natalie Portman's character who's trying to become sort of an elite ballerina, and she's dealing with some very difficult psychological issues, and they're manifesting themselves in very bizarre ways. That said, there are a lot of movies like this. They tend to be lower budget, they're weird, they can't get a lot of money behind them. Black Swan is one of those stories, but it's done by an amazing director with some incredible performances, top-notch production, which somehow makes it even weirder to me. But if you've seen it, I think you will have to agree it definitely belongs on this list. Now, we'll leave that Oscar-nominated movie and move to something that's much more under the radar, Faults, directed by Riley Stern. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar, he also directed The Art of Self-Defense, and most recently, Duel with Karen Gillan. And even though he has a different voice and style, I will say that his directing style and storytelling style is fairly closely related to Quentin Dupieux, who did Rubber and a handful of really absurdist comedies. Faults is way more accessible though. Mary Elizabeth Winstead stars in this as someone who's deeply involved in a cult, and her parents hire a man, an expert supposedly, to deprogram her. They spend most of this movie in a small motel room, and the setup and story is interesting enough. The main character, who you'll recognize from a ton of incredible performances, including that one in the interrogation room in Seven.
He put that thing on me.
So legendary character actor, he does some wild stuff in this movie, and it's mostly a performance piece, but it's really top-notch stuff. If you like those weirder, more absurdist type movies, this one, again, it's more accessible, but it does go into some bizarre territories, and I think you're gonna love it. Okay, quite possibly one of the darkest and most off-putting comedies I've maybe ever seen. Also stars Robin Williams. It was one of the last movies he ever did. It's called World's Greatest Dad. In this movie, he plays a writer who has never had anything published, and he's got a real POS for a son. And the kid is gonna get under your skin from the jump with this movie, and you can kind of see why. He's got this absentee father who just wants to be a writer and is not really fathering that much, but there's a really weird twist in this one, very bizarre. And while David Carradine is not in this movie did come out the same year that he died, which is very bizarre if you know why he died. That's a little bit of a spoiler for you, but he maybe takes a little bit too much advantage of the death of his son. It's dark stuff, but it is funny. I will say, I don't know that I laughed once during this movie, but I did enjoy it. I thought Robin Williams' performance was great, and I did think it was a good movie. It's just so dark, it didn't really squeeze any chuckles out of me. One that definitely will not make you chuckle is Jungle, starring Daniel Radcliffe. Now, this is the true story of Yossi Ginsburg, who became lost in the Bolivian jungle in the early 80s, and he was stranded out there for multiple weeks. It's pretty wild stuff. What you get with this movie, though, is a fairly solid, if not slow-paced, adventure story. A group of friends trek out into the Bolivian jungle and have a lot of trouble making their way back. This is a pretty typical survival type story, except it is based on true events, so that helps you ride along with it a little bit better. And there's a pretty good performance from Daniel Radcliffe. I felt like his accent was pretty convincing, and the reason Jungle makes this list is because there are some really disturbing things that take place while he's lost in the jungle, and they range from cutting parasites out of his forehead forehead to, well, I tell you what, I'll let you discover the rest for yourself, but at least it's one of the least disturbing movies on this list. Okay, my next one not only ends up having one of the most messed up scenes I've seen this century, it also has a huge cast with stars like Matthew McConaughey, and it's got a huge director with William Friedkin, who did The Exorcist and a handful of other great movies like The French Connection. I'm talking about a lesser known movie called Killer Joe. Now, the setup for Killer Joe is pretty straightforward. You've seen it before. A couple of people hire a hitman to bump off somebody so they can collect some insurance money. Again, standard setup. However, Matthew McConaughey's character in this movie is unlike anything else you've seen him portray. At least it is as the movie progresses. Right up front, he's a fairly non-assuming character. You wouldn't think too much of it, but he reveals himself as the movie progresses and it becomes wilder and wilder. This movie can be very graphic at moments. If I were to describe to you what ultimately happens in this movie on paper, you would think that is so weird and off-putting, and it is. But again, it's in the hands of an expert director with some amazing actors, and it's glued together so well. This chaotic, wild thing that this movie turns into actually ends up working pretty well if you're in the mood to watch something that really is truly messed up. Now, we've got 5 more movies on this list, but I'm going to take 1 minute to tell you about today's sponsor because they're going to help you access way more movies than you currently are able to access now. CyberGhost VPN. So CyberGhost has been my choice for a VPN for years now for multiple reasons. One is it keeps my web browsing safe, secure, and private. They don't keep any logs, and it's really affordable. I love everything about it. But the real reason, the thing I like most about CyberGhost VPN is with the flick of a switch, I can jump to Netflix, Hulu, other streaming services in a variety of countries, which means I can instantly unlock vast libraries of great movies that are just not currently available in my country. CyberGhost is super easy to use, but they offer a 45-day money-back guarantee, so that way there's no risk if you end up not liking it, and they have great 24/7 customer support to help you get it set up on multiple devices, because you're going to be able to use CyberGhost on up to 7 devices at the exact same time, and it's all the different types of devices you're already using to stream movies. Right now, when my viewers go to the link in the description, they can pay as low as $2.29 to unlock way more movies and shows than they could ever possibly watch. Again, that's as low as $2.30 depending on which plan you pick. That's less than half the cost of one new release movie rental to unlock, again, way more stuff than you could ever possibly hope to watch. It's an amazing deal at an amazing price. But speaking of amazing stuff, let's move on with the top 5 movies on this list. All right, my next one is a 90s throwback, and it is one of the more accessible movies on this list, meaning the way that it's presented, I think a lot of people can watch, even though the story itself is very disturbing. Kiss the Girls. Now, this is based on a book by the same name and stars Morgan Freeman as Alex Cross. He would play Alex Cross in another movie, and I believe Tyler Perry played Alex Cross at one point. It's a popular character across a whole series of books. Kiss the Girls, though, is the best Alex Cross movie by far. Ashley Judd also stars in this. It's easily one of my favorite movies of hers, and it is about a series of missing women and an investigation. It does go, again, into very, very dark territory, but the way it's presented is not visually off-putting. Most of the really disturbing stuff is happening off camera. I just say that meaning don't avoid this one if you don't have a strong stomach. This one is watchable and is very, very good for something from the mid-90s. It still holds up today. It does feel like it's from the mid-90s, but it's still a great watch today. My number 4 pick is from my all-time favorite director, Martin Scorsese, and out of everything he's done in the last 10 years or so, this feels the least like a Martin Scorsese movie. However, Silence is still an amazing movie. Because it's Scorsese, the production, the look of this, the way that it's edited and cut together is all top-notch stuff. Like, it does not get better than this. The story, though, is really hard to get into. This takes place in the 17th century during a time when Japan had essentially closed its borders. It was not allowing outsiders in and was certainly not allowing people to propagate Christianity or anything that was not of Japanese culture. But this is the true story of a couple of Jesuit priests who traveled to Japan to try to locate their mentor, played by Liam Neeson, who they believe had been taken captive for spreading Catholicism. That's a very wordy setup, but you get this amazing, epic adventure through 17th century Japan. Now, This is not a samurai adventure with lots of action or anything. This is a lot of hiding, starving, torture. It's rough stuff, but this is a slow-paced movie with lots of Christian themes. Some Christians are not going to be happy about, and others I think other people won't be very interested in. So it's kind of got a narrow audience, but if I've interested you in the least, this, again, is a really beautifully done movie. Okay, and for new visitors to the channel, welcome, but typically with videos like this, I don't rank them in order of how messed up they are. I rank them in order of how strong the recommendation is. My next pick being one of the least messed up movies on this list, but it's still a really strong recommendation. I thought A Quiet Place Part 2 was an excellent sequel. Now, I was a little bit biased because it was in the middle of COVID and I was starved for a really good movie. However, I really did enjoy the follow-up here. I thought the opening of this movie was an excellent way to show things we missed in the first part. I thought the introduction of the new character played by Cillian Murphy was excellent. Some of the themes with the kids trying to grow up in this really wild environment where these sound sensitive aliens have taken over was great. I will say though, as good as this movie is, most of it's not going to make sense without having seen the first part, because that explains a lot of how the monsters in this world actually operate. I do think it's one of the best monster movies I've seen in years, and certainly one of the best sequels to a monster movie I've seen in maybe decades. Believe it or not, an Amazon Prime original movie makes my number 2 spot, and it features a stunning Joaquin Phoenix performance, some amazing cinematography, and a female director that nobody talked about when this movie came out for some reason. However, I still think You Were Never Really Here is a beautiful but dark movie. Now, I've recommended this on the channel a bunch of times, but it's probably been well over a year, so it's time to break it back out, blow the dust off of it. If you've never seen this gem, I honestly think it's one of the best Amazon original movies ever made. It is fantastic stuff, but it is really dark. In this movie, Joaquin Phoenix plays a man who is hired to save children from sex trafficking. So right off the bat, it's dark as it can get, but his character has a really grim side. However, this movie is very restrained. It holds back. There are a lot of things you don't see. It doesn't explain a lot of stuff to you. It shows you rather than tells you. So you do have to infer a lot of things. However, the cinematography is incredible. There's a great score by Johnny Greenwood, who did the music for There Will Be Blood. I will say, if you've been a subscriber for a while and you generally like my darker movie recommendations, I'm telling you, You Were Never Really Here is top-notch stuff. Do not miss it. And then with that, we're gonna go all the way back to 1995 with an absolutely stunning, revolutionary movie from France that is mixed languages, a little bit of English, In the City of Lost Children. Now, this is from legendary director Jean-Pierre Jeunet. He would go on to do movies like Amélie. I just recently talked about his newest movie, which is a Netflix original. It's called Big Bug. The City of Lost Children is easily one of his best movies. I would put it right after Amélie. This is a stunning, surrealist type movie. It takes place in this almost like sci-fi fantasy future that has a very unique look to it. But the basic plot is this sort of mad scientist character is kidnapping children and stealing their dreams to make himself younger. It's kind of a story you've heard before, witches trying to make themselves younger, whatnot. However, you get a really great, if not early, performance from Ron Perlman in this movie. There's a fantastic little girl that carries it. For the most part though, as good as the story is and everything, the visuals in this movie are just absolutely stunning. Again, this came out in 1995. There's very little computer effects here. Most of what you see is in camera. It's miniatures, it's sets, it's matte paintings, and it creates this world that is unlike ours in every single way. There's like no straight lines or anything. I mean, everything you see was built for the screen, and it's this amazing masterpiece of a movie. When I recommended the Netflix movie Big Bug, I did say, do not make that your first Jean-Pierre Jeunet movie. Watch one of his other ones. This would be a great place to get started with his filmography because there's some amazing gems that he's done over the decades, this being one of my personal favorites. But that is the list. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any additional recommendations. Who knows, one of your recommendations might make it onto a future video. If you want more recommendations, head over to my website, darrenvandam.com. There is a link in the video description right alongside that CyberGhost link. If you want to unlock more movies, I highly recommend clicking my link in the description. It's cheap and it works. But I will keep making these videos as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special messed up episode, and you will see me on the next one.